Hi, welcome back to Recap Pro. Today I'll recap an action horror film called Alien Abduction. Spoilers ahead. The movie begins with leaked footage from US Air Force about a kid who fell to the ground from the atmosphere along with his camcorder trying to escape from a spacecraft. For centuries, people have been disappearing around Brown Mountain in North Carolina. The locals believe that the disappearance is linked with sightings of what they call the Brown Mountain Lights. The US Air Force had two goals. The first one is to determine if UFOs were a threat to national security and to scientifically analyze UFO-related data. In October 2011 from the same location, the Brown Mountain, 17 people went missing after hundreds of eyewitnesses claimed to have seen the lights. They also recovered a body of a dead kid in a nearby field with his camcorder. The media conducted several interviews with the locals. All of them are saying that it's been a long time and every time they saw the lights, people go missing from the Brown Mountain. They also mentioned that there are scientists around who are studying about the vanishing and the lights seen in Brown Mountain. It spreads all over the news as well. Riley Morris is an 11-year-old kid living with autism who loves to carry his camcorder. He used to record everything using his camcorder. One morning, Riley with his family went out camping at Brown Mountain for a very long weekend. They're having fun while playing music on their way to the campsite. They settle and started to build their tents and set up a fire when they arrived. His dad and his brother Corey invited him to go for a hike to look around and make sure the place is safe. During the night, they gather around the fire to have a chat while heating their marshmallows. After that, they decided to extinguish the fire before going to bed. Everyone is sleeping except for Riley trying to wake his brother as he can't sleep. Corey says to keep his eyes closed so he can sleep, but suddenly a massive light pierces through their tent. They follow where the light is coming from and they saw 3 lights flashing from the sky. At first, they thought those are just stars, but it changes when they notice the lights are moving strangely. The following day, they can't move on above what they saw last night while they're preparing to move to the next camping site. Their dad Peter uses a GPS to guide him to their next destination. When arrived at the crossing, the GPS says to turn right to a winding and foggy road, so they turn right. Riley asks to sit in front so he can film the scenery. The road gets foggier, all they can see are just the woods and a long winding road. It begins to rain and the road gets slippery. They started to wonder if they were lost, but their dad still trusts the GPS and continues to drive, but noticed they were low in gas. Their mom Katie suggests pulling over or just turning their car around as it seems like they are driving in the middle of nowhere, but the tension increases and raises their voice to each other. Suddenly the car stops after hitting a crow along the road. Dad apologizes for losing his temper and continues to drive to look for the nearest gas station. In the middle of the road, a mailbox with the number 31 is seen, so they wonder why people are living in the middle of nowhere and wonder if the mailbox is followed by 32. They also saw a grave after a few distances. Peter thinks that he will have a heart attack anytime, so his son Corey pointed his finger to their left that he saw something to freak out his dad. They are trying to change the vibes even though the place looks creepy. Eventually, the GPS says recalculating the route. It makes them think that they took the wrong turn. They started to lose signal and arrived at a tunnel filled with tons of abandoned cars. Doors are blown, lights are on and blocking the tunnel to the other side. Despite the place looking creepy and no one being around, Corey, Riley, and their dad leaves the car while Katie and her daughter went out to pee. They try to get a closer look and figure out how to cross from the other side of the tunnel. Riley is being left behind to capture everything in the tunnel, but he started to hear some strange noise at the back and a weird hand mark is seen. They also found a police car, but no cop is around. Surely if the cop went missing, his comrade will start to search for him. They are already close to the end of the tunnel and their dad waves his hand when he saw something to think they might help with their situation. He stops waving his hand and steps back. Everyone knows they are all in danger when they saw a creature comes out nearby. They run and hide behind the cop's car. All of the sudden, one of the creatures captures Peter. He screams so loud and his eyes turn all white. Corey carries his little brother and runs as fast as he can and went back to their car. Every abandoned vehicle begins to horn, alarm, and the lights are flashing while leaving the place. Katie and her daughter Jillian begin to ask about their dad. They drive away while telling that their dad is gone. Everyone is scared and panicking, but it gets scarier when a huge number of dead crows begin to fall from the sky. Corey starts the engine, but unfortunately, they have already run out of gas, so they left the car. They are all running away and went back to the mailbox they found along the road, thinking somebody is living in the woods that could help them. A man living in a cabin named Sean spotted the family getting close to him. He aims his rifle at Corey as they are trespassing. Katie tries to explain what was happening and that they need help. They heard some noise and thinks that those creatures they saw in the tunnel are following them from behind. Sean begins to fire his rifle to push away the creature and they all went inside the cabin. He gives the other rifle to Corey and Katie asks if he has a phone to use so they can call the police. Sean replied that he has a phone but it was not working in the deep mountains. Sean started to wonder about the creature he saw earlier. So they let Riley show the footage from his camcorder. He can't believe what he saw and remembers that his grandmother used to tell him stories about the Brown Mountain Light and people going missing. They set up wires with empty cans around the cabin so they would know if something was coming around. Late at night, the cans outside are rattling and something's banging at the door. Sean and Corey pointed their rifles at the door. Eventually, they heard Sean's dog Angle barking outside. Riley charges his camcorder so he can use it again for later. Sean is worried about his brother cause his brother still hasn't come back. While telling stories about the Brown Mountain Lights, his brother Scott begins to speak from the radio telling Sean that he saw the lights and something coming upon him. Sean yells at his brother not to come any closer to the lights. The radio went static and they heard Scott screaming with a strange noise in the background. Sean immediately loaded his rifle and went after his brother. He advises Corey to take care of his family just in case he won't come back before leaving the cabin. Katie went to comfort her daughter and asks her to rest. It's been a rough day for everyone so they all try to rest. Riley is still up using his camcorder when he noticed the lights coming through the window and heard a strange sound outside the cabin. He wakes up everyone when the cabin is covered with lights and the cans begin to rattle. Their mom tells them that they have to leave the cabin to escape but the creature is waiting behind the door so they shut the door. Corey begins to shoot behind the door but the creatures spread around the cabin. In order to protect his family, Corey decided to let them hide under the cabin and bravely face the creatures. He keeps on firing his rifle. Suddenly, the firing stops. Corey begins to scream after being abducted by the creatures. Their mother, Jillian, and Riley are hiding under the cabin. It's too dark under the cabin so they use their phone and camcorder to have lights. Jillian quietly weeps her tears and the rest remains silent until the creatures leave the place. Sean fails to find his brother, so he went back to the cabin to pick up the family into his truck and drop them off down the mountains to escape. While driving, Sean already knows that Corey is gone. Suddenly they saw the light again blocking their way out. Sean decided to drop them off in the middle of the road and tells them to follow the footpath in the woods until they reach the barns where they can hide. Their mom is carrying a single flashlight provided by Sean so they can follow the footpath in the woods. They stick together till they reach the barn and hide. They thought they were safe but they found out those creatures are following them. The place begins to shake and the light gets closer and closer that covers the whole barn, entering every space in the walls and on the roof. Jillian and her mother start a prayer repeatedly and eventually, the light fades away and the shaking stops. But then they hear the sound of the door creaking so they hide from another place and keep their heads low and stay quiet. They were relieved to know it was Sean who arrives in the barn. Sean asks them to go back to his truck and continue their plan to go down the mountains to escape. Katie is on her way to the truck but then the light captures her and her body bends. She begins to float and is taken towards the light on top of the roof. Sean yelled at the kids to run and he went after the lights to shoot with his rifle but Sean is also taken by the light. Jillian and Riley run into the woods before those creatures catch them. They keep on running until Riley stumbles and is left behind. It is too dark in the woods and he uses his camcorder so he can see in the dark. The battery of his camcorder is running low. He continues to walk in the woods to look for her sister and found a cave to hide in for a while. Riley seems hopeless, alone, and scared. He begins to hear a rustling sound nearby so he turns around his camcorder to check maybe it's his sister. Riley screams when he knew it wasn't his sister and it's one of those creatures following them so he runs. Fortunately, her sister caught him and turns off the light of his camcorder so they can't be found. When there are no more signs of those creatures following them, they continue to walk away from the woods and arrive at the edge of the mountain. The sun begins to rise. After a long journey and exhaustion, they stops for a while to rest. They can see where the town is. They keep walking into the woods and finally reach the road. They thought they were safe but when they look on the other side of the road, it was the same tunnel where their dad went missing. They keep running again and are relieved when they found a cop. The cop arrived at a nearby tunnel that is supposed to look for their missing comrade. The kids settle and explain what happened. The cop sends a report to their station but suddenly, they were followed and abducted by creatures and brought them towards their spacecraft. Riley is still conscious and still has his camcorder running. He begins to hear people screaming in every corner of the spacecraft and a sound of a saw ready to cut the people they've abducted. He knows he's in danger and those creatures might come back to him, so he tries to find a way out. It is too dark inside, so he follows the light thinking it is the only way out, but he died from falling. The movie ends when the authorities arrive and recovered Riley's body lying on the field. They also found his camcorder that still works, which is the answer for all the people who went missing in Brown Mountain and discovered they were abducted by the aliens. Thanks for watching.